Stuart Cameron talking rugby, and this is part 2 of the conversation I had with Radio Border's #1 commentator, Stuart McCulloch. Let's move on to the Sevens and Kings of the Sevens, which we all love here in the Borders, of course. And again, that's been affected by the long fixture and the long season and the bad weather. But again, that is something which is going to help in the future. But the one big consideration at the moment, and I know they're talking about it at Border League level, is, is it too long? Are there too many competitions? And if so, where do they make the cuts?
Well, that's it. I mean, you've got the 10 teams, 10 qualifying tournaments in the Kings of the Sevens League. And I think you look at it, and I think, most people say, right, you take a look at probably the biggest 3 tournaments in that are going to be Melrose, Jed Forest and Earlston. Always cracking days, fantastic. That's what it seems when the punters come out and go to these. Then you've got the likes of, Hoyk, and then, Peebles, you've got Berwick, and, the other teams, Langham in there as well. And I always feel sorry for Gala when they have their sevens, because they could say, right, this year we're going to have our sevens in Dubai, and I bet you it would still rain for them. I think every time Gala sevens come out, it's always cold and it's always raining. You think, will they ever get a break with the weather? I know they're actually switching back to Saturday next year, I understand. Well, they are,
so
yeah.
So it'll still rain on the Saturday.
It probably will. I mean, I think Gala Sevens Day, it's always raining, but I think, we take a look back at this year now. We had the double headers. It was a lot. We were there at the tournament. For the players, it'd be, just as worse. I mean, they would be absolutely mentally fatigued, physically knackered as well doing this. But, they got on with it. And the thing was, the beauty of it was because they were still gunning it for it, because the Kings of the Sevens, because of the point system, the financial aid that's there at the end, kind of dangling like a carrot in front of the clubs. It went right down the wire. Now, that's happened the last 2 years. I remember when Melrose played Selkirk at Jed 2 seasons ago, we thought, will we ever see it happen like this again, where it went right down to the final? And lo and behold, the season just passed. It happened again with Melrose playing Jed down at Riverside Park. And I think that's the beauty of the Kings of the Sevens. It keeps everybody involved, the players, the committee, and the supporters as well. They're all shouting, for the team, and you could see them after 2 minutes, right? And they'd come up to us after and say, right, how many points are we on now? And they were asking, how many points are we getting for that? What do we have to do? And there's so many permutations to it. And I think that's a great thing, the Kings of the Sevens. Yeah, it's a great concept. It's great to keep everybody interested, but you're right, 10 tournaments right on the slog there. Of course, we used to have the Kelson Selkirk in August time, but that was changed obviously, so they bunched up with the rest of the 8 tournaments. It's a lot. The question is, how do you change that? I mean, no seven will want to say, no club will say, well, we don't want to be involved, because I think, one club in particular, and it would never happen anyway, is Earlston. Since they joined the Kings of the Sevens, it's been absolutely fantastic for them, financially as well. The third biggest gate, I think, on the circuit. So, that just shows you what can happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's so difficult to make any cuts at all, because, the glamour clubs, obviously, like, your Gallus and Hoyks and stuff, as you say, they've been unlucky in some places. I mean, Hoyk obviously clashing with the final of the Scottish Cup, and Gala with the weather problems.
I think clubs are affected. You had the Selkirk Sevens there. Now, they had Selkirk Youth Club in the final at Murrayfield that day as well. So, there's always a clash. I think we need to get the dates clear where there's nothing else going on. There's no finals day at Murrayfield. There's no under-18 final at Murrayfield. Clubs are vying for that, date where there's nothing else on, so they can maximise the amount of footfall they're going to get through their gates.
Yeah, well, whilst we have solutions, we've offered up solutions for the Border League. I think it's a lot more difficult with the Sevens, but we will follow that with a great deal of interest in the future to see what does happen.
I mean, I've heard chat of maybe biannual tournaments, so it could be something that could be looked at, but who would want to do that? Because as we know, Sevens tournaments are the lifeblood of the club, so it's depending on who can afford it. Will it ever happen? I really don't know. That's up to the men in the know to sort that out.
But what we really want is teams like Hoyk, for instance, fielding their best team in every tournament. And now some of them, have a Saturday team and a Sunday team and that sort of thing. Melrose, of course, we must give full credit to the way they've operated, because they've had British and Irish Cup. They've had big cup runs, extra fixtures, and yet they still put out their best team when they can, even though the guys are kind of like totally fatigued after what they've done. So full credit to them. But of course, not everyone can do that. And, Jed are very competitive, Melrose competitive, and Selkirk obviously, but it's a shame, I think, sometimes for some of the clubs who just physically can't put their best seven together and would like to be competitive in the Kings of the Sevens.
Well, I think it's down to clubs that, themselves. I think they want to blood youngsters. I think there's a lot of young guys coming through the system. I think you take a look at Bruce Colvin at Melrose now. He played in quite a lot of the tournaments this season. Cracking player, scrum half. He's going to be a player that's coming through the system as well. Hawick had the likes of, I'm sure Marty Douglas made an appearance up at the People's Sevens youngster who's playing for Hawick YM at the moment. I mean, you could list young Banks at Selkirk, all these boys that have come through. It's a great breeding ground for the youngsters, and I think with the Sevens look at it, you get one big fella in there that can tackle and kind of mix it up and get the rest that are absolute flying machines and just give them a ball and let them do it. I mean, I think we've got some cracking Sevens players in this region. You take a look at the Gregor and Lewis Young at Jed Forest, Darren Gillespie, they were all kind of backup players for the IRB Sevens tournament up at Murrayfield at the tail end of last season. That was a great accolade for them. Callum Anderson, he went down to, I'm sure, Twickenham to cover for Fraser Hartness, who picked up an injury. So players like that, there is a scope for players who specify in seven-a-side rugby. Is that what they want to do? Because there perhaps is a niche there for them. I think with Graham Shield now, border boy, Melrose player, former Melrose man, at the helm of the Sevens, and there is talk there's going to be like a second-tier Seven, perhaps like a backup squad to help the senior squad, and I think that only bodes well, and I'm sure that backup squad has got to feature a lot of the young border players.
Do you know what I'd love to see, and I'm sure you would as well, is like the best of the Borders Seven
I've said
against
this, Stuart.
the Scottish team.
Yeah, Stuart, I've said this. I remember Stephen Gemmell, in fact, we had him on the show a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now, is the fact that, I'll put a Seven together and we'll take on the Scotland Seven. I mean, that would be an absolute fantastic to see as well. I mean, I think, match for match, all the boys would go toe-to-toe in that, and I think you could probably pick about 3 teams, Scotland Sevens teams from this area.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about the south of Scotland now, because obviously we love the south of Scotland, the red and white stripes, the history. Yeah. The whole thing goes back to about 1906, I think, the first game. And of course, around about 1995, that's when it all kind of ended and things went professional and the south of Scotland disappeared. Border Reivers came and went, all sorts of shenanigans going on, which, it was well supported, the professional team, first of all. Then Murrayfield got involved. It became a team which was not really run in the Borders, which I think was one of the key problems. And then obviously we know the rest of the history. But of course, a couple of years ago, at the end of December 2009, the south of Scotland returned against Northumberland, and on October the 11th we've got the Barbarians. Surely this is the start of the resurrection, if you like, of the south.
Well, it is. I mean, I hope it is. I was down in Ellerdale for that for the south game against Northumbria, and there was just that buzz around the place, thinking, here comes the old red and white back on, and it did put like a shiver down the back of your spine to think, you've seen all the players that were on show, the best from the Borders, and that's what we want to see in this area, taking on the best from other districts. And I think, this Barbarians game happening at Mansfield Park, I think is going to be absolutely brilliant. I think we'll get a big crowd there, and I think people then who leave that match after that match will be thinking, right, I'd quite fancy seeing this on a regular basis. And that's why I think, and I'm sure they'll be in the Northern Caledonia, Edinburgh, Glasgow, they would like to see the Inter-District Championship brought back. I think it needs to be brought back, because then that is kind of like a half stepping stone onto pro rugby.
Yeah, and it's going to be amazing. I mean, you can just feel the eyes peering over the Sutra Hill and looking at Hawick at Mansfield Park on that day and saying, well, let's hold on, let's see what's going to happen on October the 11th. And, it's all going to be guys from the clubs, it's going to be local people, and that's what people support in this area. Yeah,
it's interesting. I'd like to be in the selection committee on that one, actually, to see who's actually going to be chosen from the south, but I don't know who's involved with that just now to see who's actually going to be picking the squad.
As far as I know, it's Gary Parker, I think, still, and Chick, of course, Craig Chalmers and Richie Gray.
Right, so we'll see what happens there. So I think I'm sure whatever team's put out, there'll be others saying, well, maybe I'd put them in or put that in, but
that's always the banter, isn't it? That's what it's all about.
And I think whatever team is going to be put out that day, I think it's going to be a strong team, regardless of the 15 that start and the boys that are going to be on the bench. I think it's going to be a fantastic strong team, because I think Borders Rugby at the moment, we talk about the likes of Glasgow Hawks and Curry and all that, but you take a look at Gala, first game of the season up at Millennium Park, and not many teams got there and actually take them.
2.5 years, I think it was.
Yeah, that's a fantastic achievement. I think Borders Rugby's coming back, and I think Melrose have paved the way last season. They are the champions, and they're going to be hard to beat this year. I mean, my money's on Melrose to lift the title this year again. I think they're going to be hard to beat. I think Premier 2, it's an absolute dogfight, as we know it is always in Premier 2, and we take a look at National 1. I think it's going to be great. great with Hoyk, YM and Langham. They're going to be battling. Speaking to both coaches at the weekend, they want to finish in that top 4. They know what they have to do, and I think looking at both sides, first game, I think they've got the squads to actually achieve that, and it'll be great for Borders Rugby.
And what a season it is now, because we've got this new format for next year. I mean, as you said, it's dog eat dog in Premier 2.
Oh, yeah.
And I think last year when the split happened after the 11 matches, when Premier C happened, there was nothing really at stake apart from down below. I mean, Jed was safe and Peoples were safe, and there was no real problem there. But this year, of course, 4 teams, and it could be 1, 2, 3, even 4 clubs from the Borders could actually drop into regional rugby, and my goodness, that's
no, they don't want that. That's what I mean. I think this Premier 2 has got to be an absolute classic league this year. I think Premier 1, we've got Gala, Hoyk and Melrose in there, but I think all eyes are going to be in Premier 2 because they know what they have to do, and I mean it's like cup finals for every team week in, week out for them.
So we've got Jed, we've got Selkirk, we've got Peebles, and we've got Kelso. Kelso, always a concern early on.
Do you know, I don't know what it is about Kelso. I mean, I thought Kelso, perhaps, a new coach in there, I believe Kevin Atherson still staying this season. That's great, get the old boys still involved, bit of experience there. I think Kelso notoriously always slow starters, and they always leave it to the last minute to get themselves out of trouble. Case in point, last season, they had to go down to Jed. They had their dinner on the Friday night. I think 2 players were there, quite rightly so, because they had a massive game against Jed, and lo and behold, they did win that game on that afternoon, Kelso, to secure their status in Premier 2, but they don't want to be doing that year in, year out, because it's not good for the old ticker. For I don't know how the players felt, but even my ticker was going for the time. But you just don't want to see any Border clubs go down. But Kelso really need to start picking up wins early on in the season if they've got any chance of surviving in Premier 2.
And I have to say, Jed, who have managed to keep their best players at Jed, surely they have a great chance of not only, surviving, but also actually getting into the playoffs.
Yeah, they had a wee blip against West of Scotland, and that was always going to be a tough opener for them. And I think, I think they've got the manpower to do a job. I think still players to come back in, but I think their backline has got to be absolutely lethal this season. I think they've got a fantastic backline. Young, you had Scott in there. You've got the likes of Aitchison that's arrived from Duns. I think very stocky, shores up the midfield. Gregor Young, Lewis Young, Robert Hogg in there. James Hogg can come on, play at scrum half. Young Fowler can come on at scrum half. Obviously, Ross Goody will be there as well. Chris Laidlaw, is another player that's come back from a shoulder up. He's looking hungry. So I think they've got strength and depth, Jed, this season, and they're going to be okay.
Well, we'll look forward to what is going to be a cracking season, no doubt about that. But just one thing, I mean, the last 10 years we've seen all these changes with pro rugby and everything else happening. What's going to happen 10 years' time? Look into your crystal ball, Stuart.
Oh, right, that's a very good question, Stuart, actually. In 10 years' time, I'm hoping, in fact, within perhaps 2 or 3 years' time, I'm hoping that we've got a structure in place with the leagues, so everybody knows what they have to do come the start of the season, because it has been in the past where clubs don't know what's happening, getting all confused about splitting into A, B and C, and then the top 4 will go here and the bottom 4 are going into there. They need a clear structure so then clubs know what's going to happen. I think come next year, clubs will know what they've got to do. I think I'd like to see the Border League go back to the old way format of the 9 teams in there, or 9 games. First season at home, next season away. It just works its way out. And I would definitely like to see the Inter-District Championship back, hopefully in the next 3-4 years.